How's everybody doing? I hope you're all okay. And if you can see this, let me know. I think it's running okay. Yeah. Let me take some cafe, a sip of cafe. So, uh, here we are, end of July, bank holiday weekend here in Ireland. Not that means anything to me. And the weather's very pleasant. It's kind of autumnal, which I my favorite kind of weather. It's calm and dry and slight, not heavily, but slightly overcast. And all is good, more or less, or go in the right direction anyway. And I hope the same is for you and your loved ones. I was talking to a friend I haven't seen in about 4 years. We were working together. We went different ways. And he's back here, and I was just chatting to him about. It. And he was saying that like as he gets older, and I've heard this from other people, and it's true for me as well, is that he listens to more and more to electronic music. He comes from like a heavy metal background, and his musical taste would be kind of similar to mine. We both like love Blue Oyster Cult and Hawkwind and things like that, and he likes punk as well. And yeah, it's weird. I listen nearly, I think because it's kind of like less impacting or something. So it's kind of like I'm always, I play electronic music mostly, and all kinds of stuff, not just the kind of Soviet, cold wave or Eastern European dark wave, or things like Tangerine Dream and all kinds of electronic music, but also the more kind of lighter stuff. I like Jean-Michel Jarre, and I like even Enya, stuff like that. So it's just that just like electronic music sits with me now. And I was thinking about that the other day, even before I had a conversation with him. I said, "Why am I? What is about electronic music, which ostensibly say like, well, it's the most artificial music. Well, it's not really if it's analog electronic or it's digital emulators and sequencers using or digital synths using samples that were originally analog. But I think electronic music has qualities about it that is probably closer to the very ancient music of our ancestors. Oh, look, I'm wearing my Thor's hammer today. The very ancient music of our ancestors. That if we could go back in time in a TARDIS or something to the builders of the stone circles, the Proto-Europeans before the Indo-European migrations, wherever they were, and we listen to their music, we would find that it would have lots in common with electronic music today. You look at you strip down most electronic music to its fundamentals, and what do you have? You have droning, that kind of thing. On top of that, you'll have everything is percussive, so generally beats on top of that would be, you know, it's like just can't get enough. Do 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 do. It's ultimately I don't really like the Vince Clarke era of Depeche Mode, but that's what you know. That's what you can actually see Depeche Mode changing as a band in the song. All I want to do is see you. It starts off with the Vince Clarke pop thing, like all I want to do is see you. Don't you know that it's true? At the end of the song, the part where it comes in, the droning starts. All I want to do is see you. Well, the droning part, that part, electronic music comes from that. And you even like metal albums like the Mob Rules and by Black Sabbath, you have a lot of that sound. Now, the droning goes back to what the vocalizations would have been in the ancient times. That kind of thing. And on top of that, you would have had percussive, so banging thing. And a lot of that is basically emulated in electronic music using, like, you know, sequences and, the changing waves, the shifting waves. And, modulations and things like that. That's it. To get that, that was done the voice, the modulation of the voice. And so, I think one of the reasons electronic music appeals to you as you get older is it has that same kind of it primal root that was ancient music of ancient times, you know. You know, I have a huge taste in music. I'm just as happy listening to Elvis as I am to, like, you know, Burzum, as I am to anything, you know, Laibach, to disco music. I like it all. But mostly now I like electronic music, and have done for a few years now. There's just something about it. It goes into me in a different way, and it's there in the background. It's almost like this kind of harmonious soundtrack to things I'm doing. You know, where you have pop music, you sing along with a song, or if there's a really good guitar riff in a rock song. But the electronic music is almost like ethereal. It floats around in the background when you're playing it. And so I was thinking about like how we're never far from the ancients. You know, we're never far from what what brought us here initially from ancient times, and they can't get away from it even when they develop technology like, you know, digital music technology. It goes back to making sounds that were basically very primal, and even like you hear that in African music and stuff like that, Native American music. And you know it's the old stuff because in Ireland, you know, Irish music, although people think of things like, you know, Irish folk music and jigs and reels and all that stuff, that's not really Irish. That basically came to Ireland from France about, I don't know, about 300 years ago. It was a popular style of French dancing music, and it became very popular in Ireland, and it was like the Irish had a knack for it, and that's where all the jigs and reels are really from, French dance music. And it would have been brought by sailors and stuff like that. Now, prior to that, the music of Ireland would have been basically like classical music. Like you listen to Turlough O'Callaghan's concertos and stuff like that. That would have the harp playing, that with singing and harp playing. Like some of the stuff you hear, like Marie Brennan from Clannad doing when she sings with the harp, like Buchel na Heron, or The Lass of Glenshee by Altan, but just with the harp rather than the whole band. And so that would have been popular then. But there's a thing called Sean-nós singing, which means the old style of singing. And it is just like that. It's droning, and it sounds incredibly ancient because it is. And you know, and that's survived. I mean, like the song Sweet Home Under White Clouds by the Virgin Prunes on their 1981 album, If I Die, I Die, that has that sound. You know, a picture on the wall, it says it all. That kind of thing. So again, you're going back to times, and it ultimately shows that there's a kind of a wave function collapse within your own life. You know, the wave function collapses are not only macro, they're micro as well. They are very much like that, and they tie in very strongly with things like your psychic state. There was an essay in a Substack essay by a fantastic Substack essay I might add, yesterday, published by Matthias Desmet, you know, the academic, the Belgian man who was very big during the lockdowns with his whole mass formation theory. And he wrote an article about basic quantum physics, but he explained Bell's theorem. Bell's theorem was an Irish physicist that came up with, who basically was trying to find out if Niels Bohr or Albert Einstein's view of reality was correct. Now, Albert Einstein, you know, accepted that there was a quantum world, but it was still material. Where Niels Bohr, the Danish quantum theorist, astrophysicist, whatever he was, he believed that it didn't exist until you looked at it. He took the double slit experiment literally, where Einstein. But then there was a secondary theory where, well, maybe they're both right. It is a wave and a particle, and they both exist and don't exist at the same time. And it's not just the observation thing, but the observation brings this thing called superposition into reality. And Matthias Desmet explains it very well, beautifully, factly, in his article. And so, Einstein made this snide remark to Niels Bohr that just, so you're trying to tell me that the moon isn't there when we're not looking at it. Powerful kind of like conundrum. So Bell's theorem was that there was this Irish physicist who said, well, we can prove it using polarizing filters. Now, polarizing filters only allow light waves to travel in one direction. So depending on how you rotate the polarizing filter, it will stop light. So he said if both are correct, I'm paraphrasing, I might be wrong, then a polarizing filters at 90 degrees to each other would prove that that both of them were right. But it would also prove which was the correct theory, because only one would pass through the polarizing filter at a 90-degree angle. And they didn't have the proper equipment to do this until 1982. And they proved that Bell's theorem was not only correct, but Niels Bohr was also correct. And Einstein was wrong regarding the reality of the universe. And the reality of the world is it's totally created by us. Up here or in our nervous system, we live inside a state of magic. Now, I found the article very hopeful in that regard. The Matthias Desmet article, and it did prove that the moon is not there when you're not looking at it. Now, for people of the tribe, this has tribe mind people and people who wanted to be are like us and want it. This shows there's no need to be fatalistic. And there's no need to get bogged down that everything is doomed. That you can actually hack the system to change the outcome. So I think this is very important, particularly here in Ireland, where we're hearing a lot of things about, oh, the Irish are doomed, they're going to be gone by 2050. Well, if we're finished, we're doomed, blah, blah, blah. And in Britain, people saying, oh, it's all over, we're going to be in a caliphate in a few years and all that stuff. You've got to be very careful about all that things. It's like my grandmother used to say to me, don't cry bad luck. It's true, you can cry bad luck. You create a cascading effects of one unfortunate scenario after the next. Now, this doesn't mean that you go all airy-fairy and you say, oh, I just have this intention and it will come through. No, that doesn't work either. That's like black magic in a way. There's no sacrifice involved. Being a pagan, I'm very aware of the concept of sacrifice, that you sacrifice intention into action in order to achieve outcome, like in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is very specific when Krishna says to Arjuna that the manifest is not attainable merely by intention alone. It is the insertion of intention into action that generates the manifest. It's just something that was written 4,500 years ago, maybe even longer. But basically, he was describing quantum theorem. So for basically what you want, just worrying about it, just being negative about it, will make it happen, especially if you develop a hostility connected to it. But what you want, if you create action towards it, you will get what you want. Take it from me, folks. Everything I've ever wanted in my life, I've attained, I've gotten. Everything. I've done it all. Now, I've not maybe done it to the extreme thing, but I've done it. And I've done it from nothing. I came from very little. And I achieved a lot in my life. Why? Because from very early on, in a very early age, I realized and read about and knew that you could change reality. Now, what you do is you're not actually rearranging the subatomic particles of the universe as much as you're removing inhibitors. towards the stopping you from the outcome. And a huge part of the inhibitors is toxic people or negative people around you. The kind of when you say like I I think I'm gonna try this, and these ones just say you're mad, that won't work. That's impossible. Sure, what's the name? They're all doing, and you don't have that ability. Get rid of those people. Ghost them. Get rid of them. For instance, if you want to attain a certain thing, just by wishing for it won't bring it towards you. The inhibitors will be removed when you actually take action towards it, when you actually change things. So I'll give you an example. In Ireland, at the end of the 1800s, basically Irish culture was vanishing. Didn't exist anymore. Okay, it was gone. The Irish were essentially becoming British. You hear me talk about Rebel Cork and all that, but before that all happened, like even Michael Collins said, you see more Union Jacks flying on from buildings in Cork than you would in London. And the Irish were being slowly assimilated in the post-famine years, particularly during the period of the late industrial revolution, into a British way of thinking. And the Gaelic League was formed to basically save Irishness. And they were mostly, you know, Anglo-Protestants, which is always the irony of it. And not all of them, but generally, like the likes of Lady Gregory and Douglas Hyde, they were Irish though. They were Irish people. They just weren't, you know, Catholics and stuff like that from the gentry. But they saw great value in all that stuff when, say, the urban middle class Catholics didn't. And so they set about the Gaelic League, which originally was a fascinating organisation. Not only, it wasn't just about promoting books and reviving the Irish language, but it was things like they used to put on arts and crafts exhibitions at the RDS in Dublin. And it would show, and they revived things like glass making in Ireland. They revived pottery, things like, and suddenly people in Dublin had never seen, had seen these arts and crafts that were just either had died off or existed in a remote part of the country, like the Aran sweater. Look at the people all over the world now who wear the white Aran sweater. That was the Gaelic League. The Gaelic League would bring this stuff and show how it was made, show how the wool was collected, show how the spinning wheel worked, the different patrons, all the Celtic art that was saved by the Gaelic League. And they were the ones who got on stamps and money and everything. And things like glass blowing, ceramics, all kinds of things, cooking, you name it, and dancing, music, songs, poetry was a big one, as well as the language. And literally within a few years, they completely changed Ireland to a nation that stopped, that was becoming West Britain, and then suddenly become, what Sinn Féin originally meant, ourselves alone. To the point where you wouldn't have had people like Patrick Pearse being able to build up the charge toward that he had and open his own school. That without the Gaelic League were amazing. Now, unfortunately, after 1900, they were politically infiltrated by the Irish Republican Brotherhood, a fraternity, a Freemasonry type thing, but they had good elements to them too, and who moved them more towards a radical military political agenda. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because the die was already cast, and they had saved. Douglas Hyde became the first president of Ireland, of an independent Ireland. So Douglas Hyde, if you go to Owen-y-Gat Cave in County Roscommon, and near Tulsk, and you climb down into the cave of the Morrigan, there's actually graffiti on the wall carved in there by Douglas Hyde when he was a young man. And he went on to become the first president of Ireland and one of the founders of the Gaelic League. And a very highly respected man in Ireland. Intellectual, not just in Ireland, around the world. I mean, apparently at the White House, he literally, the Roosevelts were like spellbound by him. An incredible man they found him out to be. But that shows that they had the intention. So these guys got together, and women, and they said, how do we revive Irish culture? Well, we form a Gaelic League and we'll put together exhibitions. So they had to raise money go around the country and find these craftspeople and find these artisans and bring them all to the epicenter of British control in Ireland, the Royal Dublin Society in Dublin 4, and and just let people see it firsthand. And ordinary, like middle class people in Dublin who would have went to this exhibition went, wow, I'd love to get some of that pottery. Oh, those clothes and those knits and fabrics are beautiful. I'd love some of that. And the rest is history. So that was the action. The intention was to revive Irish culture. The action was to put together exhibitions, talks, print books, uh, facilitate connections and interactions. And then all the inhibitors that was against that, such as we should say, an osmosis of Britishness that was overtaking the country, had been dissolved away, and it eventually led to the independence of Ireland. Even though it didn't start out as a political movement, the catalyst of the Irish Republican Brotherhood becoming involved and taking it over. And they also did the Gaelic games as well. The GAA did that as well. It did something, you know. It changed reality on this island. And so that would have when they found the Gaelic League, people would have said, "Ah, sure, it's over, isn't it?" It's like that's all it's all vanishing. That's all the old ways. We're British now. We're Irish, but we're part of Britain. It's sort of like the mentality that Unionist folks have in the north. Yeah, but we were Irish, but we're now Unionists. We're now part of the United Kingdom, and that kind of thing. You'll never do it. Like British culture, Britain is the biggest empire in the world. You don't have a chance. It's look how many Irish people love Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was a superstar in Ireland at the time. Look how many Irish people go to Shakespearean plays and listen to British music and English music, and they're totally been in. You have Sir Walter Scott and all this stuff. You don't have a chance. That you might get some, you won't do it, and they just ignored them and went ahead and do it because they put intention into action. So what's the lesson in this? Well, those of you who say that there's no hope, that we're going to be all become Muslims, or we're all going to become into the Great Reset, or we're going to come into all this stuff, well, the Gaelic League proves that's not true. But it proves more than anything else that intention and talking about it is only stage one. Stage two is action. I think this is one of the reasons I've sort of like become, I've most of my life I've been quite hostile to Christianity. Not Christian people, I mean Christianity in Europe. I've been quite hostile to it. Not hateful, but hostile to it. And but I don't have any problem with Christian people as individuals. It's their own business. But in recent times, my heart has become softer, and I see great value in things like folk Catholicism and traditional English Anglicanism. The whole concept of it, when you see it at its root, it's very close to the paganism that we want. And so that softening of my attitude towards things like folk Catholicism and seeing Catholicism more as, well, I have to say I do admire, like in a Tolkien sense, the fate of these ordinary people when it wasn't pushy or evangelical, which it rarely was in Ireland, and even among Protestants, you wouldn't get it. I mean, you get these Free Presbyterian loopers. Well, they're not even pre-Presbyterians. They're usually just from some radical church, and they'll be standing at the corner on the street in Belfast going, and the rain came down and the waters did flood, but the children of God survived. And they come over to you and shake your hand, and you go, ah! And you say, how are you, sir? And you go, well, thank you. Oh, Dublin man, I love the accent. Come on, Jesus loves you too. This kind of thing, And you get, they're harmless in their own way. But that's the only time you'll ever see any kind of evangelicalism on this island, and it's not nasty. It's generally quite friendly, and they're singing their spiritual songs. It's kind of similar to what you get in Black Baptist churches in America, but you only see it in Belfast on street corners, and here and there, and a few towns in Ulster. You won't really get it anywhere else. But because I've softened people who are traditional Catholics and traditional Protestants have come into my life and have enriched it and made me see my own paganism in a new way, as a kind of there's a flux between the two, where there is a middle ground, and by God, it's a beautiful middle ground. It's a beautiful middle ground. And if it wasn't for me softening my attitude towards Christianity, this would have never happened to me. This would have never happened. This would have never taken place. So that was the action, you know, and so it inhibitors to me meeting people that have been very good in my life, men and women, have been removed, and I'm very, you know, and I've never had a problem with being close to people of different religions, but their religion has given me something back as a pagan, and I think I've given them something too as well. I think I've basically been I'm a good I think I'm a good advertisement for paganism. I don't wear a witchy hat. I don't wear a hood and a cloak, and I don't carry a staff, and I don't stand outside a yurt with a boner. I don't do those kinds of things, and I don't go around acting like I'm fucking Merlin or Gandalf. I'm just a regular person, and I think I've done a lot of help paganism that way. I'm not a Wiccan. I don't call myself a fucking druid or anything like that. And I try to keep it to show that it's completely contemporary with modern life, and so that you know, this has worked out very well for me, I think, on many levels. So those of us who, while it's easy to get despondency, I mean, look at it this week. Isn't a classic example? Who would have thought a pair of knockers would have ended cultural Marxism and woke? But it did. That ad with that pretty American actress Sydney Sweeney for those denim jeans, American Eagle, or it's called. Uh, just the traditional 1970s or 80s image of a girl in jeans, and a kind of a clever play on words. I have good genes. The the demons of the collapsing wave function, of the sort of the collapsing 9/11 demonic wave function, went psychotic over it because they're seeing their woke cultural Marxist world evaporate. And the proof is in the numbers. You look at the sales, and the value of that company has gone up just by this girl showing her knockers and her bum. And and you look at Jaguar, where it's woke ad, the company's on the verge of bankruptcy because of one ad. And so American Eagle said, well, fuck this, let's do something like back in the old days of Jordache jeans or Levi's. And they went for something traditional, everything, something that everybody loves. Like, and denim coming back is even part of the wave function collapse. I mean, everyone loves those American kind of girls. We love, you know, Linda Carter. We love Daisy Mae Duke. You know, we love Raquel Welch. We love the pretty American girl with the you know, with the nice knockers and the nice bum, and we like denim, and we like that kind of thing. The whole world loves it. And boom, it worked for them. They took a risk in the age of woke, and boom, the company is flying. So they put that into that. They put the action into the intention, and the intention into the action. And suddenly, boom. So it's little things like that. But what does it always tell you? It requires an element of bravery. You know, the willingness to break the mold, and also that sort of can-do feeling. You know, I was like thinking the other day, if I had more time, I'd like to take, you know, do you remember the Dukes of Hazzard? Just the good old boys, me never meaning no harm. You know, they had the car, the General Lee, and every time they went over, they did on the car horn. I was just thinking, like, someone should put a compilation video of all the people melting down over the Sydney Sweeney video and put that the car from the General League, and that's all, you know. You think how far we've come from when they were pulling down statues of Confederate things, and they tried to make fun of our southern accent and all this stuff, and it was a hillbilly inbred thing. No, it's the truth. It's the reality. It's the reality. No one's knocking any other race. No one's making fun of anybody. They're just saying the world loves pretty American white girls, and that doesn't mean they love them because they're racist, because they genuinely like the aesthetic of it. In the same way, we love the aesthetic of black soul singers, for fuck's sake. It has nothing to do with, it's not a racial judgment, it's a cultural preference. You know, we love black soul music, black soul singers. We love Shaka Khan. We love all that stuff. We love Earth, Wind and Fire. We love the Four Tops and the Temptations and all that stuff. We love it. Why? Because it's great. And we love Sydney Sweeney's Knockers and Denim. Why? Because it's great. It's as simple as that. It's nothing to do with anything else. It's about things that make life nice and fun and better. So don't ever get bogged down in this thing. Oh, we're all doomed to under Sharia law in Europe, or it's the end of stuff. No, it's time for Gaelic League type groups to start operating in every country. If you live in England, and especially if you live in some, you've got lots of great regional stuff, like Scousers who will, see, one of the problems of Scousers is they're still locked into the Labour Party and they still think Thatcher exists. They see Thatcher everywhere. Most Scousers, not all. But just say you live in Yorkshire or something, and you live in go sort of like to celebrate that kind of culture. Scotland, Wales, France, you name it, Normandy. Create action to bring it together. You know, create action to bring it together. And you live somewhere in England, and you're in the tribe, and you say to yourself, like, well, what can we do? Well, let's organise a May Day festival. You know, a proper old-fashioned May Day festival, or maybe, you know, if you have time, a harvest festival. That's like a you know, kind of thing. Let's, you know, with like Morris dancers and folk singers and artists and this kind of thing. And even in America, you know, you have that. You've got all the Appalachia stuff. You've got every New England stuff. You got it all. This is the answer to, instead of watching the internet videos going, we're doomed, to actually use the power of culture and the power of just things that are good and real from the folk spirit of the people, and start saying, this stuff is good, this stuff works, and this stuff has value, and this stuff can make the world a better place. Become Sydney Sweeney's Knockers. If you know what I mean, that's what I'm on about. Because, you know, that I know that sounds funny and everything, but there's an underlying truth to that. There's an underlying truth to that. That is like, don't apologize for what you are. Show others that you're proud of it and you're good at it. So take care. I'll talk later. So remember, action and intention is needed to remove inhibitors towards the outcome you desire. Verily. They make it harder and harder to see the fucking things. It won't go. There you go. We are the witches, our husbands all left us.